Every Batmobile that ever existed borrowed something from the one before it. 30 years of design decisions leading to here.
Mattel sent me their kids line Batmobile straight out of the box. It had no packaging, so this is not a big unboxing reveal, which is a bit awkward as I have been doing some recent unboxings where they're 2 and 3 pack action figure sets. It's just a car and it's ready to go. But I have to say this says something about the relationship I have with them. I have been fortunate to work with Mattel over the last few years across great stop motion projects with their WWE, Masters of the Universe, and Street Shark brands. They are aware I love DC and that I will be making some great content with these products on this channel. They send me products like a prop heading to a set, and that's exactly how I treat it. But before I do any work on this car, I want to take a moment to observe this Batmobile and soak it in. I want to try to understand what influenced this and how it come to look like this. Looking at the design of this vehicle, I can see it's taken a lot of inspiration from previous iterations of the Batmobile, which is why I want to spend some time dissecting this car and understanding the decisions behind it. My love for the Batmobile came from the Batman animated series, and Kenner released the Batmobile and it was love at first sight. How the Batmobile was able to change into that Batplane just added to the love, along with the Batcycle and the Batboat, which I hope we get to see down the line by Mattel too. The Batmobile has always been seen as an extension of Batman. It's so synonymous that whenever we see a new Batman release in any medium, the close follow-up question includes surrounding the look of the new Batmobile. I'm assuming Mattel has been aware of this in their decision-making process, which is why they showcased the Batmobile so soon in the kids line already. We've seen the Batmobile change over time, from something aesthetically pleasing like in 1989 and Returns, to something more practical in the real world as we've seen in the Dark Knight trilogy and the Batman. So we know this is a vehicle with proper design history, and that this vehicle didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was built on top of 3 generations of Batmobiles, and what I want to do is explore the design history of the Batmobiles, which I feel has influenced this Mattel DC Kids line Batmobile. So let's go back to the beginning.
1989, Tim Burton's Batman. This is where modern Batmobile starts. Before this film, the most famous Batmobile was the TV show version from the 1960s. Bright, colourful, almost fun looking. Batman back then was quite campy, but by 1989, Frank Miller's comics had turned Batman into something darker and more serious, and Burton's film followed that completely. The designer Anton Furst and his brief was basically, make a car that looks like it belongs to someone who lives in darkness and fights crime at night. No chrome, no bright colours, nothing friendly about it. Let's start at the front. That nose. It's not a grille like a normal car, it's a jet turbine intake. They literally used real life components from a British Harrier fighter jet inside the nose of this car. So even the parts that look decorative, they're based on actual aircraft technology. That immediately makes it feel different to any car you've ever seen. The car is about 20 feet long in real life. They built it on 2 Chevrolet Impala chassis joined together. That extreme length is a big part of why this looks so dramatic. It feels relentlessly long and low. You feel like it would never stop. Like it's already moving when it's parked. And look at the colour. Flat matte black, no shine anywhere on this vehicle. That was a very deliberate decision. This car is not supposed to catch the light. It's supposed to disappear into the shadows. Now these rear fins. This is one of the most important design decisions on the whole car. Big, sweeping, almost bat-like sitting over the rear wheels. They don't do anything mechanically, they're just pure design. But they tell you everything. They give the car a silhouette that you can only recognize from a distance in any light. You see that shape and you immediately know that's the Batmobile. The back of the car was actually inspired by a 1950s Italian concept car called the Fiat Turbina. Burton's team were pulling references from all over the place: military aircraft, 1950s concept cars, Art Deco architecture, and somehow it all came together into something that felt completely original. The two rear spoilers on the Mattel DC Batmobile are a direct descendant of these 1989 fins. They maintain the size, but with a modern touch, yet has the same principle. Give a car a recognizable wing-like silhouette at the back, which is what perhaps makes my subconscious bias gravitate towards this design, as it tugs on that nostalgic value. The Mattel vehicle keeps that same pushed forward, long and low stance. It doesn't sit tall, it hugs the ground. This is where it came from. The 1989 car had that forward-facing Browning machine guns built into the nose. Mattel have brought that weapons on the car idea through, which you'll see on the sculpted missiles on the front of the hood. The 1989 Batmobile was so influential that it was basically used as the direct starting point for the animated series just 3 years later. Which brings us to the car I grew up with. This car is timeless. It stood the test of time for one of the best looking cars of all time. Ask any comic book fan and you'll always find this amongst the top 3 favourite Batmobiles. Batman the Animated Series started in 1992, the same year as Batman Returns, and I was hooked. I'm so glad it still gets the recognition today it deserves as one of the all-time best versions of Batman. Here's something I didn't know until recently. When the first few episodes of the animated series were sent off to be animated, someone at Warner Brothers saw the Batmobile design and panicked. They said this is a different car to the movie car. It'll confuse the kids. Change it to match the Burton version. But luckily Tim Burton himself stepped in and said it's fine. He gave it its blessings, which tells you something about the designers who weren't just copying Burton's car, they were doing something related but also different. And Burton can see that. So what did Bruce Timm and his team actually do? They took the core ideas from the 1989 car, long, low, dark, fins at the back, and they stripped everything else back to the cleanest version possible. The animated car is simpler than the Burton car. Fewer curves, squarer lines, less going on. And that simplicity is actually what makes it so powerful. There's nothing on that car that doesn't need to be there. The front of the animated series car is really distinctive. It has this massive chrome grille, wide, flat, almost like a mouth. Very square, very direct. No pointed nose like the 1989 car. Just this wide, authoritative face staring at you. They describe the design as combining the elements from the 1920s and 30s Art Deco shapes with futuristic touches. The idea was that the car shouldn't feel like it belonged to any specific time period. You couldn't look at it and say that's a 90s car or that's a 50s car. It just felt like a timeless machine. The fins are still here, longer and more dramatic than the 1989 version. These fins add to the dynamic look, especially when moving, perhaps a bit more like smear frames when doing hand-drawn animations. They run almost the full length of the rear section, and the car has this very dark grey and black colour scheme, not as black as the Burton version, but close. You also found it in blue, which is the one I actually prefer. This version also has a slated exhaust vent underneath the rear, ejection seats, and a shield mode that would close over the cockpit when Batman left it unattended. I watched this car every single week as a kid, and I think it genuinely shaped how I see design. Something about the way it moved in these episodes, the weight of it, the sound design, the way it cornered, it felt real even though it was drawn, and that's very hard to do. The side profile of the Mattel vehicle, that long, low shape with the fin sweeping back, Mattel has given choice to the people by allowing them to pivot the fins back to give them more straight line and emulate that speedy look. If you look at the front face, the blunt, wide front end on the Mattel vehicle, no extreme pointed nose, just a firm, direct face. That reads animated series more than any other influence. Compare the two head on and you'll see it immediately. The animated series Batmobile by Kenner had a bat motif on the top end of the long bonnet. The Mattel vehicle has a bat symbol right in front of the nose below the windshield, near enough the same location. That idea, putting the bat mark on the front of the car so it faces whatever it's driving towards, that comes from the animated series tradition. 2005, Batman Begins, Christopher Nolan. And I'm using the Lego version here because I don't have a die-cast, but actually that feels right. Christopher Nolan and his production designer Nathan Crawley designed the original Tumbler by sticking together model kit parts together in a garage. They used the nose cone from a P-38 Lightning model kit as the basis for the jet engine section. So representing it in Lego, honestly, not that far from how the real thing actually started. Look at these two side by side for a second. Every Batmobile we've looked at so far, the 1989, the animated series, they're all long and low and built around speed and elegance. The silhouette is always pointing forward, always feels fast. The Tumbler is the exact opposite of all of that.
The front is enormous and flat, wide, aggressive, and it doesn't have a nose that points forward. It has a wall. And those massive front wheel arcs push out to the sides like a car that's actively trying to take up as much road as possible. Where every previous Batman was trying to cut through space, the Tumbler is blocking it. Nolan described what he wanted as a cross between a Lamborghini Countach and a Humvee. He and Crawley were specifically trying to make something that looked like that was designed by a defense contractor in a war room, not by someone who cared for what it looked like. The Mattel vehicle has adopted a lot of the aggressive weaponized look from the Tumbler. The 1989 car had guns, but they were mounted to the side of the cars. The Tumbler put them right in the face of the car. The Mattel vehicle sits low and wide, more so than you'd expect from a kid's vehicle. That wide crouch stance rather than a long elegant one is Tumbler influence. It doesn't just want to be fast, it wants to look like it could take a hit. The Tumbler had its engine components very visible, nothing hidden, everything exposed and functional looking. The Mattel vehicle's yellow engine detailing running along the side picks that same idea. You can see the mechanics. The Tumbler had a dramatic attack mode where the driver moved position and the car shifted configuration. One of the most memorable moments in The Dark Knight when the Tumbler in its dying moments ejected Batman onto the Batpod, which reflected its ability to evolve. The Mattel vehicle split hood weapons bay where the whole front section opens up to reveal the Bat drone has that same transformational energy. A car that changes is more interesting than the one that doesn't. Right, everything we've talked about, the 1989 car, the animated series, the Tumbler, all of that is in here somewhere, so let's take a look. First thing, the colour. It's a gunmetal grey, not black. Almost every Batmobile we've seen has some shade of black. The 1989 animated series, the Tumbler, all black. The Mattel vehicle is a modern grey with bold yellow accents. That's actually a brave choice because grey risks looking less dramatic than black, but at the end of the day, it is a kids' line vehicle. But what Mattel have done is use that grey as a base to make the yellow really sing. The yellow engine detailing along the sides jumps out immediately. This vehicle reads clearly across the room on the shelf in the shot. A pure matte black vehicle would blend into a dark background. This one stays visible. Smart choice for something designed to be seen and played with. These two rear spoilers. This is the 1989 Batmobile's influence right here. The animated series kept them and made them even longer. The Tumbler got rid of them entirely. Mattel have brought them back. They're smaller, they're more compact than the original versions, but the intention is exactly the same. Give back the car a wing-like silhouette that you could recognize from any angle. In fact, Mattel has given people the choice of how they'd like to pose the shape, as it can keep them upright like the 1989 version, or speed line flat like the animated series. The overall shape from the side, long, low, pushed forward, this comes from the animated series. The BTAS Batmobile had this incredibly side-strong silhouette. You could put it in the shadow and it was still instantly recognizable. The Mattel vehicle has the same quality. The nose pushes forward, the rear fins pull back, and everything in the middle sits very low to the ground. When I look at this Batmobile, I'm not just looking at a new release. I'm looking at 30 years of design history compressed into one vehicle. There are a lot of details that trace back to Kenneth's playbook. It's not copied, but reinterpreted. Mattel didn't just build a Batmobile, they built a tribute to every version that came before it, filtered through a fresh design lens. And that's what makes this one hit differently for me.
I grew up with the animated series Batmobile on my shelf, and I held the '89 model in my hands many times than I can count. This isn't replacing those memories, it's standing on their shoulders. It takes everything I loved about this vehicle across 3 decades and gives it a voice that feels genuinely new. So whether you're a long-time collector or just discovering the Batmobile for the first time, this is a vehicle worth paying attention to. Not because it's the newest thing on the shelf, because it understands exactly what came before it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do consider subscribing as I have more exciting DC and action figure content coming on this channel. Till then, I'll see you next time.